I'm Paul Gallagher. I'm a trauma education officer in Wave Trauma Centre. But I also came to Wave as a client myself about 15 years ago. And I'll talk, if we'll have some time, a little bit about that later on. And Aidan here as well, is health and wellbeing, working in Wave, and he's going to speak after me around the work that he's done with clients and Belfast Exposed. Okay, let me get these clickers working. Well, I can see it here, but okay. So, many of us here will know about trauma. Some of you may not. But in our understanding, trauma can shatter lives. Okay, we get that. It can shatter people's sense of space, time, shatter their sense of safety, shatter their assumptions about the world, about who they are, about their place in it, about their self-worth. It can really just turn people's lives upside down, and that's what we see and have seen over the years in our own lives, but also in those who we support, the victims, survivors of the Troubles, and also those who have come through the historical institutions, the mother baby homes, and the Magdalene Laundries, and the Workhouses. So we see that on a daily basis. But trauma is a fact of life, but it doesn't have to be a life sentence, and that's something we see as well in our work at Wave, within the community and everywhere out there, like this one from Peter Levine. Have any of you seen this before? Yeah? What is it? Kintsugi? Yeah. And it's a great artwork. And really, if many of us don't know it, it's this Japanese art style where people put back together these broken pieces, maybe using gold or lacquer, and turn the piece into something more beautiful than it was before. And that's at the heart of post-traumatic growth. Many people have heard of post-traumatic growth. Put your hands up. Yeah, but maybe 30% is mostly over on this side of the room here, and a few over on this side of the room. And this is something that we have seen in so many ways and so many different people over the years. It's something that I've recognised in myself after my own struggles, and it is about struggles, about coming to terms with what's happened to you, about finding meaning and purpose as well. So we all know about trauma. We all know about post-traumatic stress disorder, intrusion, anxiety, all the other things that come in that can impact us, that dissociate us from ourselves, that leave us feeling unsafe. And really, I like this definition of trauma, where it results from an event, a series of events, or a set of circumstances that we find ourselves in that can be physically, emotionally harmful, life-threatening, that has lasting adverse effects on us. Okay, and that can have an impact on our functioning, our mental, our psychological, our physical, our spiritual, our social well-being. And really, we're talking here about the whole person can be impacted by trauma. But we also need to see that there is another way, and there can be another way out through this. So Nietzsche would have spoken about that which does not kill us makes us stronger, and I think somebody else sang about it a few years ago. Now, while it might make us stronger, it knocks the stuffing out of us too, okay? And that's something that we recognise in ourselves and Wave. But post-traumatic growth as well is this concept that was first sort of, people put their finger on it back in the mid-1990s. A couple of researchers called Tedeschi and Calhoun, psychologists themselves, working with U.S. Army veterans. And they began to see that people who had experienced deep, real deep trauma that had ripped their lives apart were now experiencing some sort of personal transformation. They were recognizing this in the work they were doing. And it suggests this positive change from that which previously existed. So we're not talking here about maybe people getting back to levels of functioning. It's about a transformation in their personality. It's about a transformation in how they see themselves in the world. It's transformation in how they begin to behave and how they begin to build new relationships. So it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's a process in the long term, and this struggle to come to terms with what's happened to you. And this is something that we see in Wave, and this is something that we see in ourselves too. And what are the mechanisms for growth? So in Wave, and as my role as a trauma education officer, the first thing and one of the main things is psychoeducation. So learning about the impact of trauma, learning about what it does to your brain, what it does to your body, what it does to how you behave, is a massive way of helping people to understand and take back some control. Where you see these light bulb moments going off in people's heads when they begin to understand that this is just a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. People begin to find meaning in their trauma. People begin to find some purpose in what's happened to them in the struggle. That's not to say that you should be happy that this thing happened to you and that you're finding some new meaning or some new existential meaning in this. But it's more about not the event itself, but the struggle to come to terms with it over time. And that's very important as well. And again, in many ways, the identity that you maybe had before has been thrust upon you in that instant and has been taken away from you. And a new identity you have to start creating over time as well. And through this, we begin to build a new narrative around the trauma itself and about who we are. In some ways, it can be around retelling the story using words, but also through photography and through the arts as well, which is another great way of doing it. And that's why we're here today, using photography as that medium. But there's so many other ways of doing it. And what comes out through this as well is these domains of post-traumatic growth. Maybe some would call them symptoms of growth that people begin to see. And the first one is this greater appreciation of life and a changed sense of priorities. You begin to value the supposedly smaller things in life, right? Instead of the big things about going out and getting that big house and that career. It's about sitting and taking time to appreciate nature around you. And photography is a great way of doing that. You begin to have warmer, more intimate relationships with others. First off with yourself first, but then with others, whether it's family, friends, your peers. A greater sense of personal strength, a recognition that you've been vulnerable, that this has happened to you, but that you're able to come out the other side, and maybe when things happen in the future, you're stronger for it as well. And a recognition of new possibilities and paths in one's life, but also having maybe the courage to go and take them, whereas maybe you hadn't before. So when you're experiencing growth, it becomes that bit easier. And also a spiritual development. Okay, it could be strengthening your religious faith, but also a sense of recognizing your place in the world as something different than what has come before. What am I like for time? Or 5 minutes, that's good. So that gives you more time then to speak as well. I don't want to hog all the limelight here. But growth, in many ways, comes from within, right? That was something I recognized in my own story. It can come through counselling. A lot of it comes through social support and the support that we get from those around us, whether that's in Wave, whether that's within the community, whatever sort of pathways that you have out there and the resources that you're able to bring in, whether it's Belfast Exposed or others, is great. But peer support is a massive way of doing this, and Aidan's going to speak about that in a moment. But just while I have those few minutes left, my own story that brought me to Wave started back in 1994. Okay, I was injured in a gun attack in my home, where myself and my family were held hostage for an hour. The gunmen lay in wait for our neighbours. The neighbours didn't arrive, so they decided to shoot me on the way out the door. And I was hit 6 times and left with severe, life-threatening but life-changing injuries when I woke up. in the hospital that next day. So that was 31 years ago since that happened. And it was a long journey of recovery physically, but also psychologically. But the big thing for me was around 15 years ago, whenever I came to Wave as a client to get involved in the Wave Injured Group. We led a campaign for those who were injured for a special pension and reparations. But that was one part of it. But I was also involved in the men's group, in the different art groups, in psychoeducation. We have this whole psychoeducation package here. It's short courses. I also went on and did my degree in trauma studies with Wave at Queen's University. I went on and did a master's and a PhD and all these different things down that route. But the biggest part for me was the people that you met within Wave. Not just the staff like Aidan and others, but the members ourselves, people like me, who you began to see and you began to recognise each other and support each other and open up to each other and help each other grow and help each other plant seeds along the way. And as now, when I'm back there now working and they're paying me a wage and everything, it's great. Not just volunteering and everything else, but to be part of that whole family and that whole team. And to see so many of you here today, all doing your own work in your own places, whether it's up in Coleraine or wherever it is in and around Belfast, and taking people out into the nature, and being involved in this whole notion of self-care, this radical self-care that we need to look after ourselves. It's not just some airy-fairy thing we do. We need to really look after ourselves so we can look after those we support as well. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to pass it on to Aidan here, and then hopefully we'll come back for some questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Paul. Hello, I am Aidan McNeill. I'm a health and wellbeing caseworker at Wave Trauma Centre. I am also Paul's trusty sidekick for the day. I have been working in the field of trauma for around 10 years. I've been in my current role for over 6 years with Wave, working on the front line, one-to-one with groups and with individuals who have been impacted as a result of the troubles and conflict in Northern Ireland. I'm going to follow on a wee bit from Paul around my experiences with photography, and obviously how the relationship came to be in relation to how a trauma centre became connected with a photography organisation. And just to kind of follow on from how well David and Mary and the rest of the panel spoke earlier, and also Yasmin, kind of that theme around healing and growth and the importance of peer support, but also the importance of building relationships. But before I go into all that and show kind of data and what we have seen and how we measured the outcomes of photography, I want to give you a wee bit of background of how our relationship with kind of photography began within Wave. It was around 2019. I was in the job around 6 months. I was working with an individual who had been severely impacted by troubles-related trauma. They had diagnosis of PTSD. A lot of the conditions and symptoms that they were presenting with was what Paul kind of just talked about, the kind of that disassociation, all the stuff that was on the slide about anger, kind of lack of trust, didn't feel safe, kind of didn't have any meaning for this world, had thoughts of life not worth living, the kind of suicidal ideation. And I met with him, and he said he only felt safe in 3 places. The first place was his home, which is understandable because safety in his 4 walls. The second place was Wave, understandably again because it's a trauma centre. He's getting the support and access and services. And the third place was a photography organisation in Belfast City Centre. And that kind of struck me at that point because I kind of understood trauma, studied trauma, and I was like, okay, people regularly say about not being able to access kind of places in city centre. They felt it not feeling safe, feeling hyper-vigilant, not, especially in Northern Ireland, the goldfish bowl that it is, people felt city centre and the amount of atrocities that occurred there during the Troubles, it's understandable why people wouldn't venture there. But he was adamant about how this place was kind of changing for him, and he did a lot of individual courses and just the educational courses that David spoke about, and some of the learning that he had done. And he did level 1, level 2, level 3. But it wasn't just about the education and the skills he learned through photography. And that's kind of what I want to hone in on today. It was actually the relationship building and how the environment and the safe space that was created by this photography organisation created and planted that kind of seed, what Paul spoke about, of where he began to start healing. And that's kind of where it ventured where my ears pricked up, and I started to delve a wee bit deeper because I wanted more of the people I work with to have this deeper meaning. I wanted them to feel safe and start to build that relationships with other people outside of a trauma organisation. And that's kind of where I came to meet Belfast Exposed. And I wanted to see how we could support people to heal and to manage their symptoms of trauma in a way that was grander than a one-to-one support or one person going to groups. So after 2019, I was kind of torturing Mervyn and Connor all the time about groups and courses. I then kind of met with Deirdre and met with a few of the other staff with a colleague about their mental health and wellbeing program in 2022, and to see how we could support more of our clients to engage in this wonderful type of therapeutic intervention. Because it was maybe ignorant of me, because I wasn't very aware of photography. I didn't know what it could do or how it could support people, because it was what Yasmin said there. I was so focused on the traditional medicines or the traditional interventions in mental health around CBT and around all what kind of those theorists or doctors say will support people with trauma symptoms. And what I learned was the benefits of peer support. And this quote from Matt Shepley kind of indicates that and what we found. So peer support breaks through the isolation by creating a safe space where individuals with PTSD can be amongst others without fear or judgment. Peers offer empathy born from shared experiences, which can be more impactful than traditional interventions. And kind of that's what we found when we met with Belfast Exposed. So we did an 8-week pilot program with them around supporting individuals, survivors, and victims of the Troubles and conflict, and how they could tailor a program for our clients' needs in 8 weeks. We had 10 people. Some of those people are here today. And the outcomes of that group, I can't explain it with words, and because I didn't foresee it happening. We've run many groups and courses within Wave, but this was different because I can honestly say I didn't see it being a success. I didn't foresee it being something that people would continue to attend because, again, of where it was, and it was only photography. How could this make such a difference? And that was kind of that, for me, an eye-opener because of the outcomes. And you'll see here by kind of the data, we did a pre- and post-evaluation of the program. So before the program started, we used the PHA, who were our funders at the time. We used their kind of health and well-being scale, and it showed that a lot of the time before the program, people felt that they weren't feeling optimistic about the future. They weren't feeling good about themselves in terms of self-esteem and confidence. They weren't feeling close with others relationship ways, and trauma symptoms were kind of still heightened and they weren't reduced. But you can see through the orange bars there the difference that the program had made, and it kind of follows on from what's been spoke about today and what Paul touched on. It wasn't just the actual skill and learning, it was the people. It was what we were getting back was it was a safe space. It wasn't just a photography class, it was how they made us feel. It was making us a cup of tea when we arrived, asking us how our day was. And from working in kind of community and voluntary sector and then working with other statutory services, you can understand why people would maybe stay within their lane just with heavy waiting lists and stuff like that. But Belfast Exposed didn't do that. They worked with people holistically, and they looked at people and created this new meaning making for them. And we did a kind of a lasting evaluation from the course, and that was only 8 weeks. But I'm pleased to say that Belfast Exposed has continued to let that group of people continue to do a drop-in with them weekly, and the difference that has made on these people's journeys and to help them heal has been astronomical. It really has been. And we found when we did the overall review of it that those were the key principles that were underpinned, and it was all the stuff. This looks like it was kind of copied just from trauma-informed practice, but actually this is what we found when we actually looked at the data and what people were saying to us. So people did feel safe, they felt trust, they felt that they had peer support, collaboration, choice, empowerment. So all the skills they learned, but also it's the relationship building and feeling safe and those seeds of growth. And that's kind of following on from what Paul had said. And it's okay measuring data through the scale that we used from PHA. But I'm a firm believer that data and what people say is kind of where we get the most information from. So the next number of slides, I'm going to let you take time to read through them, will show the impact photography as a tool to heal has had on the individuals I've worked with. And as I said, it was more maybe ignorance for me that it wasn't a traditional intervention, but it has been made such a difference. So you can see the highlighted words showing all those people maybe don't see that in post-traumatic growth, but that's all the words used and all this theory that Paul had talked about on how people do grow. This one's very powerful. Never in a million years did I think I would use photography as a tool to heal. But now I look at things so differently. I would have previously walked down the street with my head buried and my negative thoughts racing. Now I look at things for their beauty, and this would never have been possible without photography. The weekly group is more than just learning a new skill for me. It's my therapy. And this follows on from earlier, that therapeutic kind of photography and what Belfast Exposed offer. For years, I've found it hard to articulate and talk about my trauma. But through photography, I found a way to talk about my trauma. Photography helps me feel regulated within the midst of chaos. And they're all words and quotes from actually people who participated in the program and still do, and people who have been through their journeys and have tried all the traditional interventions and have been down talking therapies. And this today is about partnership working, and it's important that you work with that person. But a lot of that, whether it be talking therapies, whether it be photography, I just feel that the space created by Belfast Exposed has allowed these people to heal. And I didn't put it up there, but one of the clients actually and participants said to me, Aidan, for years I talked about my trauma and I talked about my incident and I got emotional. But now I am able to actually look at a photo about the troubles, and I'm now allowed, I can look at it now through a different lens, no pun intended, and I can see that for its beauty instead of obviously the impact and the devastation that obviously trauma can cause, which for me is so powerful, because if you think of how trauma can impact somebody, and for photography to have such an impact on somebody's lives and to change it. And I just want to say a big thank you to Belfast Exposed for allowing us to be part of the work and to show the difference kind of photography can make in kind of supporting people to heal and help people with their mental health. And that's me. Thank you.